Hey, everybody, welcome to FL Teams Live. It is your weekly NFL Power Rankings coming at you after week 10. Apologies for some weather and under the weather issues causing us not to go live last week. We'll talk about who finished number one last week, but they're not number one anymore. As always, joining me is Jeremiah Hensley. I am Jeff Macolino. Before we dive right in, let's talk to you about our newest partner. They are revolutionizing the world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports. Download the Symbol app, that's SIMBULL, and use the code FLTEAMS to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Again, Symbol, download that app, and the code is FLTEAMS, what it says right underneath Jeremiah and my faces. All right. Let's dive into the bottom half of the league, starting with our unanimous number 32 finisher, the Houston Texans. The Las Vegas Raiders continue to shine in the bottom half of the rankings. They're at number 31. Carolina Panthers get a big divisional win, but still are number 30 in the rankings. Jacksonville, the Jaguars are at number 29. Pittsburgh Steelers come in at number 28. The Denver Broncos at number 27. Chicago Bears at number 26. The New Orleans Saints at number 25. The Detroit Lions at number 24. The Cleveland Browns at number 23. The Jeff Saturday-led Indianapolis Colts at number 22. The Arizona Cardinals come in at 21. The defending Super Bowl champions, my son, I don't know if he is correct, but he said they are the worst defending Super Bowl champions in NFL history. Not sure if he was that was an opinion or a fact, but number 20 for the LA Rams. The Atlanta Falcons in at number 19. The Green Bay Packers with a big win. They're up to number 18, and the Washington Commanders, coming off a big Monday night victory, move up to number 17. So let's start by mentioning the Jaguars. They play the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a buzzsaw, you know. It is what it is. I still think, going back to our conversation from a couple weeks ago, boy, if they can get a top 5 pick, that's what's going to be best for that franchise moving forward. But yeah, they're not in the same league as the Kansas City Chiefs. Not yet.
No, but it looks like the moves that they've made are going to pay off. I mean, the young defensive players are playing well. Trevor Lawrence is growing. Travis Etienne is showing what he can do being healthy. So, I mean, you see all the pieces in place again. They're just not there yet. And, you know, I think maybe at the beginning of the year, I was probably one of those people too that maybe expected a bigger jump. But, you know, even with losing, there's, especially in this NFL, there's good losses and bad losses. I feel like Jacksonville fights in most games. They're close, right? And if they keep doing that and keep building on this young core, then I think they're going to be in real good shape. You know, on the flip side of that, you see a team like Vegas. I mean, what's the answer?
They're beyond explanation to me. I mean, you've got teams like the Saints and the Rams in this bottom tier who are ravaged with injuries. I mean, the Saints have nobody. That's a systemic problem in their organization, is how they handle injuries. But at least there's like, all right, when half of our starting lineup is not on the field, we have a reason. The Raiders look at themselves. What do they say? We've got all this talent at quarterback, at running back, at receiver. What's the answer? I don't know.
It's gonna be a running thing with me on this, but I mean, I'm just Josh McDaniel maybe just is not a head coach. I mean, plain and simple. He had talent when he was in Denver too, and something very similar happened. I mean, I don't know what it is about the leadership or what it is. You know, when you think about last year's Raiders team, they were kind of fledgling in the middle, and then they had all kinds of craziness happen. Stuff that you thought would sink teams, right? Like the Henry Ruggs thing, and then the kid that was pulling out guns, but all of a sudden that galvanized them. Right, then Gruden, then that just galvanized them. and they came together and played up to their potential. This team was set up to contend, and they're at the bottom. I mean, that's a rough spot to be, man. To see, Denver and Vegas down in the bottom are the ones that you're like, where do you go from here? Because you've mortgaged your salary cap, you've mortgaged your picks. Like, you could perennially be down in the bottom now.
Well, the Raiders at least are in position where they've got a first rounder this year, and right now I think it's number 2.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a hell of a player you can get at the number 2 pick in the draft if that's where they end up. I mean, the Raiders are a unique team though, where unlike the Jaguars, I think they need to pull out some wins down the stretch here, because next year I think you're looking at pretty much the same team on the field.
yeah.
I don't think you're going to see dramatic changes. I don't think, especially since they're still paying Gruden, I don't think they're going to fire McDaniels. I mean, Carr and Adams are both under contract. Jacobs is a free agent, but he's played well. I wouldn't want to let him walk, although running back's probably the easiest position to replace. So for them, I think they're in more of a boat of, we need to get some confidence so we could be ready to go next season. And if we get a top 10 pick, top 5 pick to add an explosive playmaker somewhere, on the field, we're taking a team that should be a top 10 team, and we're adding talent that, again, when flip side, you look at the Saints who traded their first round pick, the Eagles now would be picking number 4 or 5 in the draft. Yeah. So there's worse places you can be, I suppose, than the Raiders, but it's a weird situation.
It's funny though. You see the difference a quarterback can make. Again, down in this bottom portion of what we're talking about, Chicago, Justin Fields, if he continues to grow the way that he is, Chicago is sitting in an unbelievably great place with all of the picks that they've just started to purge out, right? And the players that they're trading and letting go from the Roquan Smiths and, forget the guy who went to the Eagles, the defensive lineman, and even going back to the Khalil Mack and all of that. So like Chicago has stacked themselves up to do this. And if for nothing else than to just put it out there live, I think I texted to you and Isaac when we were talking. I see so much in Justin Fields right now. I see Josh Allen 2.5, 3 years ago, right? That's what I see. I see that young Josh Allen that he just started getting playing time for the Bills. And you were like, God, this guy's got a cannon, but he makes some really stupid decisions, but he can run, right? And like Justin Fields is showing some of that. And he's not a small running quarterback, right? He's not a Kyler Murray. He's not one of those little guys. He's a bigger, made for this sort of way. And, with the emergence of Cole Kmet, they get a couple other playmakers on that offense, and in Chicago could be really set up well for the next couple of years.
Yeah. They've got some talent, and Fields has definitely taken a step the last couple of weeks.
On the flip, though, what's that say about Derek Carr? I mean, it's probably about that time, right? I mean, if the Raiders continue to fall like this, Derek Carr's got to sit at the top of that.
Yeah, it's a tough one to place the blame on, because I don't know that. I mean, Derek Carr is one of those quarterbacks. I've always kind of had him in the Kirk Cousins class, where it's like, and maybe that's overrating Derek Carr. I think he's a little below, but is one of those guys that, he's good enough to win if you surround him with players. But in a lot of his career, he hasn't had a lot of talent around him.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse this year. I mean, he made it work last year through all of the turmoil that they went through. I think that he showed a lot last year as a leader. But yeah, he in his post-game press conference broke down crying, which is like, this, I love to see the passion. But yeah, it's it's a weird situation. I'm not sure. They're a team that is going to be a big question mark for me for the rest of this season and heading into next year, because they're a team that could be 4-13 next year, or they could be 14-3 next year, and I wouldn't really be shocked either way. So
well, and I know you mentioned your son mentioned him man, but the Rams, their season probably just went from bad to worse, right? I mean, you're talking Cooper Kupp's going to miss some time. And I've never
Yeah.
seen a team as one-dimensional offensively as this Rams team has been this year. Maybe they were that way last year, but I didn't feel like last year everything was funneled to Cooper Kupp.
Well, they had OBJ for the playoff run.
Right.
And that, I think, definitely added a new dimension to them. But yeah, I don't know if Stafford's going to be back from his concussion this week. I think 2 of their offensive linemen went down this week. So yeah, you're talking I said last week when I was watching the Saints-Steelers game, this is like a preseason game. There's guys who have no business playing in the NFL playing because the Saints are down 3 of their starting offensive linemen. They're it's like watching the third quarter of the first preseason game. And the Steelers, that's just their roster, frankly. But yeah, this Rams-Saints game is going to be the same.
It sounds like this happens, man, to your Saints every year. And I've not noticed it as much. The last couple of years, I've followed them closer because of you. But there does seem to be an ongoing health issue there always. Like, what is that? I mean, is it trainers? Is it
I would fire
staff?
Yeah, I would fire everyone remotely involved in the strength and conditioning and training staff, every single one of them. That would I think you burn the whole thing down and start fresh. But they've mismanaged Michael Thomas's injury multiple times. Jameis Winston's injury situation's been completely mismanaged. Yeah, it's just bad, and it's the story of the last 2 seasons for the Saints. It's that we just can't field a healthy team. And, 1 year you call it a fluke, 2 years it's something else. But even the couple years prior to this, I mean, one of the big stories was Drew Brees going down with broken ribs and all of the other injuries he had. And we just kind of chalk that up to him being old. But it makes me wonder if he was mismanaged a little bit, too, the last couple years of his career.
Something doesn't feel right there. Now, where you guys stand? I mean, the Bucs seem like they're starting to get a little hot. I mean, and we'll get to them in a little bit, I'm sure. But, in that division, I mean, is there a fighting chance still in there?
I mean, mathematically, but I don't. I think the game against the Steelers was kind of, and I get it. Somebody was saying, look, some fans are saying they should fire Dennis Allen. No NFL coach has been fired after 10 games into a season. It's just unrealistic. But the other point is, who are you going to hire if you fire a guy who was playing with half of his starters not on the field?
Right.
You say, in the second quarter, James Hurst, the left tackle, went out. They were playing with a backup left tackle, left guard, and center in that game in the second half. What do you think they're going to do offensively when TJ Watt's on the other side of the damn field? Of course, he came back this week. So.
Yeah, of course. That's the way that works. Hey, maybe Derek Carr will end up wearing that gold and black next year.
I don't think the Saints have many other options than to try to recruit another veteran because I don't know if Jameis is going to be back. And Andy Dalton, I think, was admirable for a few weeks, but I think he's shown his limitations as well lately.
Yeah. Speaking of quarterbacks on the heap, though, man, before we jump out of that bottom, I just got to mention it. The Washington Commanders knocking off the Eagles, doing it with Taylor Heineke playing the ugliest game. That kid wins ugly, but he wins. But he wins. And I just saw that Ron Rivera announced that he's going to be the starting quarterback again this week. So even though Carson Wentz is coming back, Wentz is losing his job again.
Yeah, you got to stick with the hot hand. And yeah, it was divine intervention. I said last week that we didn't do these because the Eagles would have been number 1, and I would have been so begrudgingly, pissed off about it. But God, didn't want anyone to proclaim Philadelphia number 1 in anything. They lose the World Series. The Eagles lose their undefeated season. Now Bryce Harper needs Tommy John surgery, and the beginning of next year for him's uncertain. So Philadelphia, step back. You're a loser city. All your sports teams are losers. That's all I have to say.
And wrapping up the bottom half quarterbacks, Matt Ryan. Jeff Saturday gives the reins back to Matt Ryan, and he had probably his best game of the season.
Interesting.
That coaching change may end up paying dividends just as an outlier. That just something might work there.
I doubt it, but I'm intrigued to see how they compete against the Eagles this week.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I'll maybe reevaluate after this week. Getting to our top 16 here. Number 16, the very disappointing Los Angeles Chargers. That whole AFC West, just a disappointment. Number 15, the Tampa Bay Bucs after their second straight win. Number 14, the New England Patriots. Number 13, the Seattle Seahawks. Number 12, the San Francisco 49ers. Number 11, the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 10, the Tennessee Titans. Number 9, the Dallas Cowboys. Number 8, the New York Giants. Just keep winning by small margins. Number 7, the New York Jets. Number 6, the Baltimore Ravens. And there was definitely a cutoff between the top 5 and 6 through 13, I would say. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins. Number 4, just barely losing a tiebreak with the number 3 team. They had the same amount of points, but slightly being edged out. The Buffalo Bills finished number 4. The Philadelphia Eagles, number 3. The Kansas City Chiefs, number 2. The Minnesota Vikings wind up as the number 1 team in the power rankings after week 10. The first place votes, by the way, 2 for the Vikings, 1 for the Chiefs, 1 for the Bills, 0 for the Eagles. Maybe a little overreaction to the Eagles' loss, but actually, you had them the highest at number 2. No one else had them higher than number 3. I had them at number 3 behind the Chiefs and the Vikings. Maybe a little overreaction. We'll get to them in a second. Let's talk about the Bucs first. They're number 15. Their second straight win. You know, say what you want. They're still not lighting up that scoreboard. That was a tight game in Germany. I mean, they were playing a good Seahawks team. 21 points. That kind of seems to be their high water mark. I know people want to love Tom Brady. I don't know why. Looks like, I don't know why anyone would like Tom Brady at this point, unless you're a Bucs fan or a Patriots fan. But
it is really weird, man, that all the NFL went from hating that guy to like he goes to Tampa and all of a sudden he becomes everybody's favorite underdog. It's really odd.
Yeah, he has some fishy things going on with that crypto company he was involved in, but that I don't know enough about it to comment, but it sounds like people might be going to jail over that situation or something. But yeah, they won. I still haven't changed my opinion. Their offense is garbage. Their defense is good. I've thought that all year. Their defense is good. They've got some flaws. They did look a lot better in the run game. That they were giving carries not to Fournette, who's just outside of week 1 has looked horrible this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like every other season's kind of been that way for him, though. Because you remember in Jacksonville, he was like unstoppable, and then he kind of disappeared and lost his job pretty much, and then left and bounced out to Tampa, and then great year, down year. But you see little glimpses of things that I think give the general public that raise of the eyebrow. Is Julio Jones catching a 36-yard touchdown pass, right? And he's not going to be healthy all year, right? Or even for most games. But to see him have that explosive ability to do that, Brady leading them back to win, as time's ticking down. It's still that team that in the NFC at the right time, they have the people who have been there before. That I still think I think I've been riding that train a little more. Is like the Bucs. If they're just going to hang around, and I think Atlanta eventually. I keep waiting on Atlanta to just fall apart.
They lost to the Panthers.
Well, that was bad.
Look, you talk about the team sticking around. We didn't talk about number 18, the Green Bay Packers. I'm like, don't let Aaron Rodgers figure this out with this Christian Watson kid, or he starts figuring things out with these young receivers. That's a team I don't want to run into.
Look, the NFC, again, there's a lot more room to play in the NFC than there is the AFC. In the AFC, I think like we pretty much, I mean, it's only week 10, I get it, but we've got a pretty clear picture of what the playoffs are going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, minus 1 or 2, right? I mean, but we've got a pretty clear picture of who's at the top of that class.
Yeah. The NFC, you know, 3 teams out of the East are probably going to get in, maybe 4. That could be the case in both conferences. It's kind of unbelievable, those 2 divisions. But yeah, it's far from settled. That's for sure. Let's talk about your Miami Dolphins. They're up to number 5. This was a nice win for the Dolphins, because I think my biggest concern with them is, boy, they let some bad teams hang around, like the Bears, the Steelers, like
the Lions.
They didn't do that with Cleveland.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, the bye's coming at the perfect time, if you ask me. One, you know, Bradley Chubb got a little more involved last week, so we're starting to get pressure up front with the front 4. Jalen Phillips getting some heat and some pressure coming. But, you know, the offense right now is just firing on all cylinders. And that under-the-radar move of adding Jeff Wilson and moving on from Chase Edmonds, you've got 2 running backs who are very familiar with Mike McDaniel's role. Mostert and Wilson have played together for a long time. They're similar but different. Wilson's a little more one cut and go. Mostert's a little more speed. But they play well off each other. So now, literally since Wilson's come over, the Dolphins have actually started to run the ball. And they did a lot of that against Cleveland. And they did it by literally separating this 50-50, right? It wasn't one guy's getting 80% of the touches. Mostert and Wilson are almost getting equal touches throughout the game. And by doing that true 2-headed monster, right, both who can catch the ball and run, it really changes everything. And I think what made me feel even better about the Cleveland game was Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle weren't really the focus of the offense. And that's the first time all year that's happened. But it's going to be good to know, because what's going to happen if and when? Because as you move closer toward the end of the season, you start thinking about things like playoffs. People are going to scheme to take away what you've been good at, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to find other ways to win. And Tua did a hell of a job moving the ball, getting other people involved. The fullback, you know, the running backs out of the backfield, Gesicki on big plays. Cedric Wilson even made an appearance. But when you start checking these boxes, the defense needs to get together. Chubb can help change that. The secondary is still so beat up, and there's no real end in sight for that. You know, we're still playing an undrafted rookie at corner at Kader Kohu, alongside what Xavier Howard's doing. You lost half your safety tandem. Your nickel back's gone for the year. So the secondary's beat up. Who knows if Byron Jones is going to get healthy? I mean, he started season on PUP, but didn't go on IR. But he's been eligible for like 3 weeks, and he's still not back. So I don't know what that's about. And so the D come together a little more pressure now to relieve that pressure on the secondary, whereas the secondary used to, you know, give the front longer to get there. It's got to be reversed. And then the other part is the special teams. Special teams concern me, from our kick returning to our ability to stop kick returns to Jason Sanders. And so this bye week, to me, I'm hoping we bring in some kickers, try them out. But again, my whole mantra through all things Dolphins this season, Jeff, have been like, I want to try to stay as level as possible, because it is a lot of ups and downs. There were big wins at the beginning of the season, the Buffalo, you know, and Baltimore and the way it come back. But then there were some losses in there that were bad, the Jets and, you know, and the Bengals, and then the letting the other team stay close. Like, I feel like Miami goes from hot to cold more than any team through pundits and fans' eyes too. One week, everybody's like, they're trash, Tua's awful. The next week, it's like, they're a top 5 team. They're a Super Bowl contender. And it's like, I don't know that either one of those is true. We're somewhere in the middle of that, right? So, I mean, I was impressed with the way they put Cleveland away, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions in Miami.
Yeah. It's bottom line though. Things look nice in the standings, which is important. I mean, the Bills with another loss, and curious to see. They obviously in our rankings, they would have been 2 last week. They fell to 4. Not really a significant drop for the Bills. Losing to the Vikings. And frankly, the Vikings, number one, I don't disagree with it. I had the Chiefs number 1, but I don't disagree with the Vikings. They could have lost almost every game they've played very easily, including, frankly, Josh Allen doesn't fumble the snap, that game's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the Vikings went out there and just bullied the Bills.
Justin Jefferson doesn't make the catch of the last decade almost. I mean, I don't even understand how he pulled that down.
Yeah, no, it was insane. The game plan was just throw the ball towards him and let him. I mean, that's what I was asked who the best receiver in the game is. I said I have a hard time saying anyone but Jefferson right now after what I just saw. It just
it does feel like Josh Allen's making a few more careless mistakes.
He leads the league in interceptions.
Right. There's some of that peeking back in. And, unlike what we were just saying with the Dolphins, where we're building a running game, Buffalo's lack of a running game is going to cause them to get exposed from time to time. It's going to happen.
Well, they have the cold weather to deal with.
Yep.
And look, no matter what they say about Josh Allen's elbow, it's not going to get worse, whatever. It's going to be a problem for a little while. I mean, he has a rocket arm. If he loses even a little bit of that, or if he second guesses himself and that causes that's how fine a margin is. And teams are getting amped up to play Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, I still think, top to bottom, they're the best roster in football. I think I would not pick a single team to go beat Buffalo on a neutral field. Even Buffalo on the road, I would not pick a single team that I would say, I'm very confident this team would beat the Bills. Yeah,
true.
They'll lose some games, but I think the league really is a lot of time the defending champion, like teams just show up ready. Well, the Rams are not really bringing that energy out of their opponents, but I feel like the Bills are, especially I think the opening game of the season maybe set that tone of we're the big boys on the block right now. You got to bring your A game. And it's like, boy, every week it seems like they're playing a killer too. Like they have not had a tough opponent week in and week out. And I still think they're probably the best. I think, the Eagles-Vikings are an interesting debate because the Vikings lost to the Eagles badly. But that was back in week 2. And it
was prime time. Kirk Cousins in prime time.
It's a weird thing. And then again, I told you my number 1 team, Kansas City, just quietly just going about their business. They lost a real nail biter to Buffalo. Otherwise, they're just going about their business, just winning games. Their division does not look like it's the scary gauntlet that we all assumed it was going to be. So they're a team, that right now they'd be getting home field advantage, I believe.
I'm sure a lot of
go to KC.
A lot of defensive coordinators wish they wouldn't have heard the name Kadarius Toney last weekend. When you saw that start to make plays, because Kadarius Toney is a playmaker. I mean, that's who he is, a game breaker, right? Not saying that he's technically sound, but the guy makes big plays. And when he starts connecting with Mahomes, that one gets a little scary. You made a great point about Josh Allen, though, is that arm, even if it's this much, right? Because Josh Allen is the kind of guy that if you go back to talk about like technically sound, throwing the ball, making the right read or leading the receiver, there's a lot of things that guys do well. Like the thing that they kept saying about Tua during the Cleveland game was he's a accuracy savant, right? Tua throws very accurate passes and where he's trying to go. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen gets by with a lot of things based on arm strength. Like he makes some questionable throws a la early Brett Favre that you're like, nobody else in the league would have thrown that ball. And if they did, it probably would have got picked off. but Allen's arm talent allows him to get through that. So it's a very valid point in that if there's one hitch or one thought or just a little bit off of it, without improved decision making, it's going to end up leading to a lot more bad than good. Kansas City still worries me, though. I mean, quietly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he didn't get a touch. He didn't get a touch against Jacksonville. So they've moved over to this, Pacheco or I forget something like that. Pachinko. And, he seems to be doing well, but I think, again,
he runs angry.
How are you going to run the ball, right? How are you going to run the ball? And Minnesota, Philadelphia, Miami, the Giants, Baltimore, Dallas, they run the ball. They run the ball. And so, I think as you progress longer in the season, that is going to play a little bit more of a role. I did see a funny NFL meme with Kirk Cousins. It just showed like the little caricature drawing on the sideline, like sweat rolling down their head. It's like Kirk Cousins realizing that NFL games or playoff games are played in prime time. I don't know what it is about him and bright lights, man.
I didn't ask you to prepare an answer for this, but this just stuck out to me. Looking at these teams, looking at the top 10.
Yep.
Team I think has to be the most concerned coming off last week is Dallas Cowboys. They blew a 14-point lead against the Packers. Packers offense that's been real rough. It's not like it's, Dallas is built on running game and defense.
Yeah.
They couldn't hold it against an offense that is not good until they actually prove it. So that team to me has to be a little concerned.
I think they are. And I think you're right, because eventually Dallas's early season defense has been dictated around Micah Parsons. But again, as the season goes on, you can scheme away people some, right? You can't completely scheme them out of the game, but if you can keep Parsons from being that disruptor, the rest of that Dallas defense definitely needs to step up. And even offensively, they were running the ball well. And I think, in actuality, I think Tony Pollard's a better back than Ezekiel right now. But offensively, I feel like, their passing game hasn't caught up to where it should be. Of those teams that are up there, I think they're absolutely probably the most worried. I would say the Giants, but the Giants don't have anything to worry about because the Giants are legitimately just playing with house money. They just really are. It's, Dallas again has went all in on this stuff. So I think they've got to be concerned.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy, if they somehow don't make it to the playoffs, Sean Payton's your Dallas coach next year, I think.
This is going to be a hell of an end of the season, man. There's going to be a lot of jockeying and moving. I was surprised to look at the number of 4 and 6 teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just there's 1 or 2 games separating so many people. With this being a game again, I feel like I say it every week on this, or we talk about it. Somebody gets hot. Cincinnati did it last year. And if you're within a couple of games, getting hot is enough to get you in. And,
right.
Home field advantage means something, but it doesn't mean what it used to.
No.
You don't have to have it to, it wasn't like when the Patriots got home field advantage, you were screwed. You weren't going into Foxborough and winning. Didn't matter. Right. I don't see that anymore.
Right. Looking ahead to week 11.
Yep.
Risers and fallers, potential risers and fallers. Any game jump out to you?
Let's see. There's a couple of good matchups in this. I was looking at it earlier. I'm interested to see that Colts-Eagles game that we talked about.
Yep, that's on my list.
that one, and the Vikings-Cowboys. If the Vikings keep just squeaking these out, the Cowboys coming off a bad loss, that should be interesting. But I don't think either one of those teams move a tremendous amount. Now, let's just play the hypothetical craziness of what if the Chargers beat the Chiefs?
Well, the Chargers skyrocket. I don't know if the Chiefs go down much. I would say if the Colts beat the Eagles, I think that's a game you mentioned. I'm dropping the Eagles 8 spots and I'm probably raising the Colts about as much. Because the Colts at that point would be 5-5-1. I mean, they legitimately then are back in the playoff picture. I don't expect that to happen, but coming off your first loss, you do want to see how they react to it. They lost Dallas Goedert also.
Yeah. And again, we touched on Las Vegas earlier, and how did they come together and get tight near the end? It's when Gruden went out, right? Jeff Saturday is obviously a player's coach because he's a player first and foremost. Saturday comes back in. He instills the veteran Matt Ryan back into the starting lineup. They win. They run the ball with Jonathan Taylor again. All the things that you thought you would see from Indianapolis at the beginning of the year are more of what you saw last week. So that could be a massive turning point because, they're right back in the playoff hunt of everything. And then if the Eagles do lose that second in a row, then you go back and you do start looking at who the Eagles beat. And I am one of those guys that every team is quality every Sunday because you never know what's going to happen. But the Eagles have, they feasted on, they outside of Minnesota, they hadn't played anybody. Right.
Yeah. They've had the easiest schedule of the top teams.
And they weren't blowing them out. I mean, there were fewer and far between of blowing them out and more of the winning by 3 against Arizona or winning by 3 against Detroit, So, I think that's probably the biggest mover there, man. Not to jump on you and take that, but I think the Colts and the Eagles, that's the one.
Yeah, I've got a couple more written down. This one is not really a winner or loser, but I got to bring it up. Huge matchup, the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. I'm not going to drop either team, the loser of this game, very far. Potentially could, you have to start talking about the Jets being a top 5 team if they can actually go into New England and win.
Yeah.
But again, that's not a huge jump in the rankings where they are. The other one I got, this is the only one that I'm actually picking an upset in, which is why I bring it up. The red hot Detroit Lions against the New York Giants. I could see the Lions pull. I'm predicting the Lions to win that game. And
wow.
That will more speak to what I think about the Giants than I think that will speak to what I think about the Lions too. I think they've had a rough go of things. They're better than their record. So that's a game where, as far as going through making my picks, I'm like, well, there's a big upset. And that would shake. I mean, I dropped the Giants, even though their record's still plenty good. I dropped them quite a bit.
No, that would take a dive. You mentioned the upset, and I'm just glancing through this, man, and I can't remember in week 11 if I'm looking down lines right now for favorites. -3, -3, -3.5, -3, -3, -2, -2.5, -1.5, -3.5. Like 75% of this board is within a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And the only ones that aren't are like, the Bills -8 against the Browns. Right. And then the Eagles -7 and Baltimore -13 against the Panthers. But outside of that, every other game is legitimately, everyone, including Vegas, is like, shit, this could go either way.
Parity. It's margins in this league are razor thin. And it's there's still my guess is there's a 3 or 4 win team that's going to make noise in the playoffs.
Holy shit. Wait, I got to bring it up because we were just going through this on it. Here's your riser and faller. It's Thursday night football.
Titans,
if the Packers beat the Titans.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, again, Green Bay's at 5-6, Tennessee 6-4. All of this doom and gloom of Packerville, right? They all of a sudden big win against Dallas, then beat Tennessee, and then if Tennessee loses that game, and again coupled with a other little thing in there, but Tennessee loses that game and the Colts win, you're right back to knot it up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would make that division more interesting. As the person who has the Titans the highest in their rankings, I have them at 8. I don't think I drop them much if they lose to the Packers. But yeah, it would say a lot about the Packers. Again, that's a team. I don't want to give Aaron Rodgers some love in his heart for his receiving core because
No.
he's he gets on the same page with them. They're going to be trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's receiving core actually showed up a little bit last week, right? Westbrook Akina coming out and making a couple plays with Tannehill. I just feel like Tannehill caps them at such a point that there's only so much you can ask for. You can never ask Tannehill to go win the game for you. You can always just ask him not to lose it.
Yeah, well, you still saw how much of an upgrade he is over Malik Willis behind him.
Yeah, that one's bad.
Yeah, he's got some time.
Is there anybody on this all the way through? Because I just look at them every time. Is there anybody that you see ranked high that you're just not a believer, man? There's just somebody that in the rankings that you continually see them ranked high, and it just doesn't, for whatever reason, The
49ers.
I'm the same place.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is. I don't. That team to me just looks like a fraud always. I feel like they can lose any week.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think they're anything special. I think they're middle of the pack team. They're in a bad division. They probably will end up winning the West, I'm guessing. I'm not much of a believer in the Seahawks.
Yeah.
But
it's one of those teams that I feel like pundits and all the quote unquote experts, those are the guys that are like, oh, they could be Super Bowl contenders. And I'm like, what am I missing? I don't see it. I just don't see it.
No, so. And the ballots, they range all over the place. But yeah, I have them lower than 12 on mine, I'll tell you.
I had them in 10, and that's only because Tennessee I don't know what to do with.
I made the joke with you and Isaac. I just want to do number 2 through 33. I don't think anyone deserves to be number 1. So
it's going to change. It's going to change, man. But again, Minnesota, if they keep this figured out, the defense really stepped up and played well against Buffalo when they needed to. They've got playmakers on that defense and Patrick Peterson, a couple other guys. You added TJ Hawkinson to Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and people barely even talk about Alexander Madison, who's running behind Cook. They've got a lot of weapons, and the defense can play really well. They just have a history, and they're led by the poster child of coming up small. Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, mutually and individually, have a history of coming up small.
Yeah, that is well said. They are the perfect pairing.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, here's to another exciting week in the NFL. Make sure you go to FL Teams, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Follow FL Teams for your top Florida sports source, and go download Symbol and use the promo code FL Teams to get yourself a free stock. Jeremiah, thank you. Thanks again for spending time with me on Wednesday night, and
always.
We'll see where this crazy roller coaster of a season brings us next.
What are the chances we have a new number 1 next week? Like 95 to 100.
I think there's a better than 50% chance.
All right, man. Always good times hanging out.